We're really excited to spend some time with you talking about a project that we've been working on for months, actually. And it started kind of at the end of last year, where we were realizing that in a lot of the discussion about bringing generative AI into organizations, there wasn't a lot of focus on what workers wanted. There was a lot of a discussion about productivity. We started hearing different organizations, including IBM and BT and others, start clearly sort of imagining how many employees they could get rid of, how much cost savings they could realize, and that did not feel like the starting point for the discussion at the very least. And so we felt like there's a real need to try and step into this moment. And some of our work with the previously, which I think a bunch of you are familiar with, is around trying to empower people leaders to feel like they have a voice at the table, and it's not just the CFO and the CIO who are glancing across the organization and seeing 30% productivity gains that translate into smaller staffs in different areas. So this is a real, as a lot of you know, Charter, we're very mission driven, and it feels like in this moment it's been really important to catalyze conversations around this. And so we've undertaken some research. We've been supported by Jody Starkman and the IRC for HR to actually do a bunch of original research, which we've been doing over the last few months, with the goal of producing a playbook, which is, we have a few kind of printed versions of it, but we can direct you to it online as well. And it's based on this big research survey, trying to survey how do we use AI? How do we introduce it in organizations? How do we think about it in ways that actually strengthen workers as opposed to undermining them? This is the beginning of a journey that hopefully we're on with many of you. There's some very clear conclusions, and Emily Goligoski, my colleague, is gonna in just a second walk you through them. But it's hopefully this is a foundation for building on this research and ultimately using this technology in ways that make work better, empower people, and don't undermine them. And there are some warning signs that Emily will talk about that are kind of flashing about how this is developing. I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to come back in a few minutes.
Excellent, thank you. We're so happy that you're here today. And let me just quickly ask about a clicker. Thank you. Wonderful. I want to quickly, before I introduce the data that I have to walk you through today, say that the source of expertise and what we really center in this research project is the lived experience of workers and managers for all of the reasons that Kevin mentioned. We this summer surveyed 1,173 wonderful people, a mix of managers and individual contributors, salaried and hourly workers across service, manufacturing, and knowledge sectors, and across the US. So I just wanted to ground us in where this data is coming from. And I'll start on a positive note, which is benefits of AI in workplace uses are real, workers tell us, though those benefits may not be evenly distributed without intervention. And please don't take my word for it. I'm going to quote directly from one of our respondents, a sentiment that really captures a experience that we heard throughout this work. Quote, AI can take over some of the more common and repetitive administrative tasks I do on a daily basis. There is worry about AI taking over jobs, but for me, AI should be very helpful in streamlining my processes, making them more accurate, and giving me time to work on other tasks. Throughout today's conversation, we are going to talk about how employers can sort of meet those needs and ensure optimally successful rollouts of technologies. And this is a conversation about AI, but I think it's actually a larger change management and technology dialogue that we're so happy to engage you all in. When we look at success factors, there's one that I want to point out in the middle of when technology has a higher likelihood of being embraced by the people using it in their work day to day. And that is, they have the ability to control the technology and to use their discretion in overruling it as needed. This is such an important part of this work to me. The idea that workers are assessing the technology, not the other way around, and that AI is a subservient enabler to them. Throughout the playbook, we have many more examples of success factors, sort of a cheat sheet, if you will. We also see moments where technology is likely to be rejected, and this is based on that worker and manager respondent data I mentioned, as well as experts who my colleague, charter reporter Jacob Clementi, and I talked to, practitioners, labor economists, research scientists, and organizers who identify watch-outs, moments when technology is forced upon workers without their consultation, when the rollout and use of the technology is extractive, racist, or otherwise dehumanizing, and when workers' bodies or mental well-being are further stressed or put at risk. I promise I do have a few light moments, but we're not there yet. Our research findings suggest that some of the individuals who may be disproportionately disadvantaged by broad use of AI and automation at work include women, workers of color, and those over 55. And it does not have to be that way. Two findings that were especially striking to our team from this data. First, Black workers share more fears about intermediate job precarity when asked about concerns that AI will displace them in their roles in the next 5 years. Over half, 53% of Black respondents said this is something they fear. That's 14 percentage points higher than their white peers, despite the fact that the Black workers and managers we surveyed are more likely to be using AI in their jobs today and say they have more enthusiasm about the role it could play in their work to come. Similarly, we find that women respondents are significantly less likely when compared to their male peers to be using generative AI tools in their jobs currently. And in the playbook, we do talk about some of the reasons for lower levels of optimism, including that female respondents experience greater job insecurity, may have less available time for experimentation with AI tools, and may bring a level of healthy skepticism that actually can help all of our workplaces. One last finding on the gender side is that women respondents reflect much less certainty about how generative AI will impact their work. Across genders, we see similar levels of interest and in suspiciousness, I'd say healthy suspiciousness around these tools, yet we see more optimism and enthusiasm from male workers and managers. Why we think this is important is we know that experience gaps within organizations could lead to increased capability gaps over time and result in greater labor market inequality, which is something that concerns us a great deal. And I promise recommendations about what to do are coming, but a little bit more of watch out news first. We see that personal and professional use of AI tools, as well as enthusiasm about trying them and applying them, drops off very starkly with age. As one respondent wrote to us, "I worry that my experience may be outmoded." This suggests a confidence gap that leaders might address and should be addressing with additional encouragement, support, and training for older workers as they put these tools into practice. One recommendation, and Kevin and I are going to speak more in a minute about what employers can be doing to address these demographic findings and some of the attitudinal and behavioral research here, is first validating concerns and letting employees know your fears are sound. Let's talk about them. We are on a mutual learning journey over and over again, whether it's fears of data privacy, bias and discrimination, and more. We hear employees say they want more communication, more dialogue, and more training from their employer, not less in this moment. A few other ideas coming up from smart people like Olga Goligoski and AI for All, an amazing nonprofit that is in the room, is really the idea that involving the people who will be using these technologies day to day earlier is a huge success factor in whether or not they will be adopted, mastered, and improved upon. And Jacob's reporting in the playbook shows 3 primary reasons why organizations see better results when they do this, when they bring individual staff members along earlier in planning and implementation policies. The first is that workers can help identify promising use cases. Second, they can identify ways that new technology will impact workflow for themselves and their colleagues. And third, workers can help identify ways that technology will impact service. This is very related to something that another of our expert interviewees, Ben Bettliger from Unite Here, which is the US and Canada's largest hospitality union largest employee union for hospitality workers, had shared with us. And that really got me thinking a lot about the interreliance between creators of the tools who right now do not, there's a reason that's a dotted line and not a direct line between primary users and the developers of the technology to think through ways that the technologies will be used and potentially misused in day-to-day labor. Purchasers, which represent many of you in the room, the employers who are making the decision to buy these technologies, to include them in your workflow, but often have very little say over how they were developed and or how they will be used. And then third, primary users, the people who will willingly or unwillingly be using these tools in their work day to day. And I found this to be a really lovely framework as we think about the roles and the reliance that these parties have on one another. I have promised you that some better news was coming, and it is here. Here exactly is, all right. We are really encouraged, both in this data and in Edelman Trust Barometer data that is at this point about a month old, that shows employees saying, bring me along. Communicate with me early on about what our plans are. Involve me in that planning. Let me know when things aren't going as planned or when we are changing course. And this to me suggests that we have a really opportune moment that employers need to take advantage of. There's one other piece in our data that has been really striking to me, which is the extent to which employees and hourly workers we surveyed said that their most trusted source for decision making and information that will fuel their decision making around AI is their employers, followed most immediately by their managers, and well above social media, friends and family, or even their labor unions. And that's a really striking finding that we want employers to sort of take advantage of this moment. I'm going to do just a quick time check. There are many examples from workers themselves that I really encourage you to read throughout the playbook. If you don't take from my remarks, I hope you will take from theirs the extent to which there is a very open invitation right now to be having these conversations, to root them in the ways that workers themselves want to develop their careers in and beyond technology use, and the ways that they want their leaders to show some humanity around this topic. With that in mind, Kevin, let's talk about what this means.
Great. Yeah, and we're excited to have this research out here, and I don't know if we have, I'd love to quickly see if we have time for a question or a reaction or two. And we're happy to spend until it gets dark outside, talking to you about this research. So there are two sort of clear takeaways which you just presented. One of them is that there is this risk that underrepresented groups in particular get left behind at this juncture, and we should all think about that, spend time with that, and think about how to. And so I want to come back to you about what employers could be doing about that. The second thing that is very clear, I think, from this research, which Emily just talked about, is workers are really clear what they want. Communicate with me, train me, and involve me. These things sound very basic, very, very simple. I have not heard anyone prior to us publishing this research center those as elements of the AI agenda, and hopefully they're parts of the agenda that you all are working on. So in terms of, maybe we could take those two things in turn. In terms of the research and reporting, what's your advice for how to engage with them?
The two things that I came out of field on this research more convinced of than ever are, now is the time to act, even as employers are starting to learn about these tools and experiment with them themselves, maybe are developing or adapting their policies, is that it actually really is the right moment to reach out to individuals in historically marginalized groups around the AI support that they tell us they are seeking. That train me, please, in a vacuum, I actually want to know, because otherwise I read about this coverage, I worry about what's forthcoming, rather than saying, you know what, let's go on a path of learning together, and let's boost my skills in ways that are going to help me and the organization grow.
Which is interesting for organizations, because you think oh, I have to come up with an AI training plan, LinkedIn Learning, what am I going to throw at people? And in fact, the conversation before that is how do you want to learn, actually? And that may provide you with a different answer that takes you to a different place and may actually be helpful. Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. The other thing that we have spoken about as a team quite a great deal is framing AI usage in terms of output benefits in the service or the product that your end customers receive. I think when we talk in terms of productivity benefits, efficiency benefits, we're often coming from a place of scarcity. And if we reframe in terms of what is the upside and more of an abundance mindset, I think it could serve us all.
That's what we found in different research, that the way you talk about it, so the immediate thing that you hear is, oh, it's developers are 30% more productive, and people in different roles, there's the greater efficiency, and therefore everyone's going to be happy because they spend less time doing the drudgery. But in fact, people that puts the risk is partly that puts it in the zone of the CFO, and I love a CFO as much as the next person, but that's a different conversation than the people-centered conversation that I think we all might want to have. And so, two framings that you can think about, as you talk about this and pursue this agenda, is one what Emily just said, which is talk about quality. We can make our work better. We can be more creative. We can. And that is validating and empowering to people. The second thing, which some separate research, academic research, has reinforced, is the idea that this provides more autonomy for workers. So if you can go to workers and say, you can be more independent in your job, you can feel more powerful and empowered using this technology, the adoption is much likely to proceed smoothly. Emily and I have used up all the time for this session, so we apologize to all of you. But generally, we're interested in feedback. We're happy to. We've been talking to different groups about this research to try and help them put it into practice. And so welcome follow-up. Thank you for coming here. Jody at the IRC has been a huge supporter of this work, and we're hoping to continue and looking for allies to build on this first report.
Thank you. And two last logistical notes, one about the study and one about what you all are going to do next. The first is, in undertaking these conversations internally, one thing I would encourage, and it's the same thing we did in our design of this survey of workers and managers, before getting into anything about predictive or generative AI tools, asking, how do you want to grow in the year ahead? Like, if you start from that place, I think that is a really useful launch point for any related career conversations. The second note, if you are watching us live, thank you for joining us. You will have the next 10 minutes, I believe, to yourself. Take a stretch break. If you are here with us in person, there are another series of breakout groups, and I am told that just outside the doors, you will see signage directing you to your plentiful options next. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes.